Hi, my name's Helen Sharp from the Knitting School in Seattle, and today's video is all about binding off. And I'm going to show you two methods. One uses the transfer tool, the other uses the latch tool, and you get to decide which one you like the best. This one is the transfer tool bind off. It's done using a single-ended transfer tool, and the latch tool bind off using the latch tool. This is the one that I generally teach beginners just because it's a little easier to learn. But the trouble with it is you pick up speed up to a point, but you can't really get super fast at it. This one has a couple more steps to it, but once you've figured it out, you can really zip along. So we're going to start with the transfer tool bind off. For the transfer tool bind off, I'm using a single-ended transfer tool. The needles are in working position and I'm keeping the yarn in the feeder. That just keeps it out of the way more than anything. And I'm going to hook into the first needle and pull it forward. Make sure when you hook in that you don't press down on the needle too much, because then you're just trapping the stitch underneath. Just hook lightly into the U shape of the needle and then pull it forward so the loop can go past the latch and onto the stem of the needle. And then push the needle out of work, which will slide the loop onto your transfer tool. And now I want to move the transfer tool behind the gate peg and onto the next needle. So first of all, I'm going to make sure that latch is open. And then I like to tilt the tool down so that the loop can't really get off there, and then just angle my way around the gate peg and hook into the next needle. And now I can pull that needle forward so both loops go off the latch. You don't need to pull it too far forward, just to about there. And then you can lay the yarn in the open latch and pull that needle back to working position, and that knits off the first loop. So now I'm going to repeat that. Pull forward, push it out of work, go around the gate peg into the next needle, pull forward so they both go past the latch and onto the stem, lay the yarn into the open latch and then pull it back. And then I'm just going to work my way along like that. So as you're binding off, the gate pegs are supporting the bound off stitches, which just makes for a more even cast off. When I first learnt this technique, I would bring the stitch in front of the gate peg, and as you bind off, your knitting gradually drops down and becomes lopsided, and your last few stitches get tighter and tighter to bind off. Whereas this one stays the same tension all the way along. So I'm doing the last few stitches now. I'm just going to pull this all the way back out of work so the loop gets a bit bigger, and then cut the yarn. And now with my transfer tool, I'm just going to go into that loop and pull the end through, and then I can just lift up off the gate pegs and I have a bound off edge. Next up is the latch tool bind off. This one is my preferred bind-off method, mainly because you can get really fast with it after a while. I'm going to use the latch tool, which looks like a needle in the machine, and I'm going to take the yarn out of the feeder and bring all the needles forward to holding position. And that automatically opens up all the latches and slides the fabric back. Now I'm going to hold the yarn in my left hand, wrap it around the gate peg next to the first needle, and hold it up on the back of the bed. So you need to hold the yarn with one hand, and the thumb needs to be free because that's got a job to do too. Now I'm going to take the latch tool and hook into that first needle so the two hooks are engaged with each other. And with my left thumb, I'm going to pull that needle all the way out of work, and that will slide the loop off the needle in the machine and onto the latch tool. And I want to make sure it's gone down the stem of the needle, that it's not still sitting in the latch. And now I'm going to turn the latch tool up so that the hook is now facing up, and then lay the yarn into the open latch and pull forward. And that basically binds off that first loop. Now I want to connect with the next needle, but rather than bring this loop all the way forward and then have to deal with this massive loop, I'm just going to keep it here and start to bring this needle back. The latch has closed on my latch tool. If that happens, just slide this down a little bit to open up the latch. Then you can hook in, bring this needle out of work, roll the latch tool up so the hook's facing up, put the yarn in and pull forward. Open up the latch, bring the next needle back, hook in, lay the yarn in and pull out. So you can get some good speed going with this particular technique. But what does sometimes happen is you drop a stitch. So let's drop a stitch here. That could happen if you lay the latch onto the stem and see how it's closed the latch, and when I pull back it drops that stitch. So keep a hold of this yarn, that's the main thing. If you let go of that loop, it'll just unravel all the way back, and then you've got a much bigger problem. So I'm just going to pick up this loop here and re-knit it a couple of times. I've got a couple of videos about picking up drop stitches you can watch if you're not familiar with this technique. And then bring it forward and continue. So you can see that as I'm binding off these stitches, they're being supported by the gate pegs on the machine, and that gives you a nice even bind off. Try not to knock the camera over here with the latch tool. Okay, so the last one, I'm going to lay the yarn in, pull it through, and then just pull a big old loop through there. And then you can cut the yarn. And then just pull the end through. And now you can just lift this fabric up off the gate pegs and it's bound off. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and feel free to make comments and requests on the feed below.